friends, it's Kayla and welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. Today we are building another house in Willow Creek, and not just another house in Willow Creek, but on the Creek Cabana lot. For some reason, I just can never stop building on this lot, and I think it's because I am a bit of a perfectionist and I have never been 100% in love with any house that I've built here. I am also usually doing a starter home here, and today I just wanted to build with no budget restrictions. However, this is still a base game only house. I plan on making this entire neighborhood base game only, and I also wanted it to feel like they were maybe built by the same builder or something to that effect. So the houses will all have a similar look as well and use a lot of the same features. So for instance, these windows will be used on every single house. I will also use this siding with brick on every single house. Little things like that I just feel like make it seem more cohesive. So as you can see, the shape has come together. We are working on the wallpaper or the siding and the roof color, and I decided to go with this really pretty blue brick, and then I wanted to do kind of a reddish roof. It's brown reddish, just to kind of go with the brick. And I use these shingles on a lot of the other houses that I'm building in this neighborhood as well. I just love the way that they have a textured look. It just, I think, adds a lot of dimension. And so now we are just going ahead and putting some trim on the house, adding stairs and a fence. And I am just going to be kind of duplicating that in the backyard as well. So this house is a 1-bed, 1-bath house. So it's only big enough for 2 Sims, and I decided to make it a smaller house on the inside. I decided to make it not fit more than 2 Sims because I feel like it's pretty common for families to buy their first house as a 1-bed, 1-bath house because it's a starter home. While this isn't a budget restricted starter home, I still wanted it to feel like it's one of the, the first places that maybe this couple or just this one Sim or 2 friends moved into. So on the right hand side, we have a kitchen. I actually think the kitchen is a really great size. I kind of did squish the dining area into the same room, and I thought about using these cabinets that we got with the base game update a while ago. However, it just didn't fit sort of the vibe of the outside of the house, if that makes sense. One of my other, I would say, hesitations with builds is I always want it to look like the outside and the inside makes sense. And I know that's not always feasible. We have all probably seen houses that make a lot more sense together, inside and outside, and also houses that have been super renovated on the inside, but the outside is still pretty traditional, and vice versa. So I instead decided to go with these cabinets from base game, which I have not used much, but I love the this wood swatch. I do change it just to be a little bit darker for the color scheme later on, but these are a nice cabinet set. I also like that the end cap has some dishes in it. The new base game counters, they have shelving on the side of those end counters or the end cabinets. However, sometimes, the cabinet it's tucked into the wall, so I don't need those shelves. And so it just makes a little more sense to me to have the glass cabinets, I'm getting tongue-tied here, have the glass cabinets with the dishes. I just feel like it adds some decoration and some dimension. And so, like I said before, I did kind of shove a little table over here in the corner, and I decided to go with the glass table. Sometimes I feel like if it's a small space and you put a glass surface, it doesn't make it feel as closed in. So that's kind of the approach I had here, and this is where I start to decide that perhaps I want to change the color scheme, because I really wanted to have chairs that matched the table and chairs that also had a colored cushion on there that I liked. So it really made me rethink every single color in this kitchen. So I do change the backsplash. I did originally want to do this newer backsplash that, again, we got in that base game update. And then I found this wallpaper, and I've never used this in a build before, but for some reason I am obsessed. I think it looks so good in this build. I love the character and the warmth, and it also kind of, in my opinion, fits more of that starter home vibe, because wallpaper, it's definitely a lot more common now, but wallpaper like this, I would say, is not as common in updated or renovated houses. And so I thought that it would look really nice if I decided to use it in this house. And I'm not sure if you can hear it, but my dog is scratching the bed behind me, trying to dig, as he does. So let's just ignore that. Here I am changing the backsplash, like I said, and I also decide to change the flooring. Eventually, I will add color, I promise. It's not going to stay completely neutral. But first, I'm just going to go ahead and pick out some clutter items. I made the island counter accessible for cooking, but I don't think you'll be able to prepare anything on this counter next to the stove. I put the sink in the island too, which I think was a really good space saver. And my dog, Rocket, what are you doing? Are you just digging to high heavens? Okay, so getting back to the build. I am just adding some wall decoration over here. I feel like I could go a lot more simple with the decorations in this kitchen because of how busy the wallpaper is. So I kept it a little more minimal. And now we are going to add the color. I decided to add blue since the outside of the house is blue as well. And I really like the way that dark kind of navy royal blue looks with the wallpaper and the darker floor. So I just went ahead and added that in with curtains as well as with a little rug in front of the sink. And now we are moving on to the living area, which I just copied and pasted that wallpaper. I really just kind of fell in love with it, this build. I know that it is busy, but I think that it really looks nice in the end. I decided to also add a little fireplace in our living area, just because maybe it wasn't this build actually. Nope, I don't think it was this build. We did an end table with a TV. And then some sofas and chairs. I also added this lamp that I feel like really made sense with the wallpaper. And while I was thinking about how this lamp and wallpaper made sense together, I also thought about how a more antique looking radio would look on the center console, but I figured it is a modernized version that takes regular CDs. It just looks like it is an old record player. So yes, I'm just cluttering up a little bit. As you may know, if you've watched my builds in the past, I am not a huge clutter person. I just feel like I'm not perhaps great at doing it. So I do keep it minimal. I also think that I just become so overwhelmed with the idea of clutter because that's how I feel about clutter in my real life. So moving on, I was able to fit a desk area over here and a computer. And then I am going to make kind of like a little storage area in the cubby to the left. First, we're just going to finish cluttering up the desk. As much as I said I'm not a big clutter fan, I did kind of clutter this desk up a good amount. I wanted it to feel decorated. So I put a plant in one corner. We've got books and a pencil case, a lamp, and I love this item. It's like a journal that your Sims have written in. I just think that it's a really nice realistic touch. So I did use that on this desk here, and we are trying to figure out what plant should we use in place of the one I had chosen originally, because it was not working out very well. So I am going to go ahead and pick out this plant and add that to the corner of the desk. So like I said, I decided to make this little cubby almost like a storage area. I really did want to add a big bookshelf, but I didn't find space for it, which is why we have that smaller one near the office area. And I also had thought about putting down this chess table. However, it was too big for this area. So I ended up eventually just putting an end table as well as the quilt stand. I thought about putting that little table there, but I just didn't think it fit in that area. So here's the quilt stand, and now I am looking for a nightstand to use, and I also added the curtains over here, which I think helps fill up the space a little bit more, but this does kind of seem just like a little useless space. Here is where I was deciding if I wanted every window and door to stay white. So that's what you'll see there. Also, a tip. If you have Better Build and Buy, you can click Shift on any lights during build mode and change the temperature and intensity. Otherwise, you'll have to go into Live mode and Shift click. But having the Better Build and Buy mod has been such a game changer. If you don't have that yet, I would recommend going to Twisted Mexie's website and downloading it, because it organizes your catalog for you, and it also allows you to look at live edit and debug items a lot easier. So I highly recommend that. Now I added that entryway table in front of the door with a mirror and some other decorations, and we're going to add a rug as well as some artwork on this wall. I kind of made my own gallery wall, if you will, with paintings that have to do with flowers or foliage. I just wish that we had some more gallery style photos in the base game, but I may do with what I have. One other thing you'll notice about my style of building is that I tend to place the front windows first, but then the other windows are placed during the furnishing of the house, and that's because I want the windows to make sense on the inside just as much as I want them to make sense on the outside. So I find that doing it this way allows me to be a little more flexible with my floor planning as well as my decorating. So we are now in the one and only bedroom. It is an odd shape because it's not wide, but it's super long. So I couldn't fit like a nightstand or anything, but I didn't think that they needed one. I instead placed this bed here, and I did a dresser and some other decorating on the other side of the room. I love this wallpaper. If I had any excuse to use this wallpaper, I will take it. And so because this house had such busy wallpaper all over the place, I thought, well, it's a little bit more wallpaper. And went ahead with this gingham in kind of like a warm brown color, but we kept the blue scheme in here as well. I do add an ottoman. I often forget about ottomans, so I went ahead and added an ottoman, and I added a laundry basket on top just for a little clutter. But overall, I do really like the way that this room turned out. I think it's simple, but it's also got some character. I do wish we had some more squared rugs as well, but off topic. Now we are in sort of this little hallway that leads you to the bedroom and bathroom as well as the back door. And I just did some minor decorating here, nothing crazy. And in the bathroom, I decided again to keep the blue theme. I just think that I am so particular about matching the colors of the outside of the house onto the inside of the house, and then every room on the inside of the house looking the same. But I think that it turned out nicely. I just put a shower, a toilet, and a sink in here, and just decorated it super minimally with the towels, and I did add a little plant in here. I think that it, is super simple, but it does the job. Now we are going to be moving on to the outside. And the biggest tip I have for the outside of houses is to make sure you're using debug or live edit plants. And the reason why I say that is because A, you have many more options, but B, the plants look like your surroundings. So I just feel like it gives it more of that realistic touch. So you'll see I use a lot of debug or live edit plants. In the backyard, I did add almost like a patio area, and I decided to put a table, some boxes, plant boxes, planters, and then this is where I decided to go in with the chess table. One thing about me is I love The Sims, but I love building in The Sims. So I don't really know much about playing. I feel like I haven't really played The Sims since Sims 3. And when Sims 4 came out, I was just super into the build and buy aspect. So I recognize that in order to enjoy playing The Sims, you need activities in your Sims houses, which is why I put the computer area and then a chess table. And I just apologize in advance for future builds that may not have anything that makes sense with gameplay, but hopefully that's not too concerning, and you could go in and add those objects yourself for your Sims. I also don't make Sims very often. I am not creative in that way. Every single Sim I make turns out the same because I kind of just make them look or dress like I would dress in real life. So that's another thing I don't do much. I really do play purely to build. So as you can see, the landscaping is done by using some of those bushes that are just the green bulbous bush, as well as some colorful flowers that match the surroundings. And I love pairing these bulbous bushes and these flowers together because the shape is so similar that it feels like they work together so naturally. And then another thing I love to do with my builds is make sure I have good outdoor lighting. I just think that it looks so pretty when you focus on that. So for the front porch, we do have a lot of space. However, I just put a tiny little seating area out here and some plants. Nothing too crazy. I did decide to go back in and add planter boxes, and I sized them down. Sometimes I feel like the planter boxes just look way too big for the house, and sizing them down worked perfectly for this window. So now we're just going to copy and paste this landscaping that I did in the backyard, and I mean literally copy and paste. So normally, if you're using live edit or debug objects, you can't use the eyedropper tool. However, with the Better Build Buy mod, you can. The one annoying thing about that is that I do have the base game only filter on, but every time I use the eyedropper tool to copy and paste, it gets rid of my filter and shows me every single possible pack, which is really not that big of a deal. I just have to click one button to turn the base game filter back on, but just a little tip so y'all know. Like I said, I'm just adding some plants out here. When it comes to landscaping, I'm a huge fan of lush landscaping. I just don't always know how to execute it well, but I feel like with practice, I have been getting a little bit better. So now I'm just adding a real chimney inside the fake chimney, and I am going to finish adding lights. And that will be it for this build. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see y'all next time.